What's going on, everybody? This is James Grandmaster Facts Boys. You're here for another episode of the Facts Project. Today, very special guest, Zander Cannon. We almost didn't make it here, but we're here.
Oh no!
welcome, everybody. Zander Cannon here live. We're here to talk about Sleep, issue 1 for Image Comics. Thank you once again.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thanks for indulging me in my flaky schedule.
It's quite all right. For one, I totally understand because your release date for this particular comic that we're going to be talking about today is tomorrow.
Right. Yeah, we're talking to everyone from the past when we don't know
It's
what's
okay.
going on. We don't know what's happening tomorrow.
Sometimes the void does talk to us from the beyond, and it just so happens that we were speaking 30 minutes ago.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right.
Oh,
Well, yeah.
yeah, no. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean it's exciting. I mean, like obviously I've been doing comics for a long time, 30 years, 30 plus years now. And yeah, and it's interesting when like something's about to launch and sometimes the company is really sort of like managing a lot of that stuff. Sometimes it's self-published, or sometimes it's like I don't even know when it comes out because it's some big publisher and it's for a different book market or whatever. But like with Image, it's like, wow, it's very transparent. It's like, no, it's coming out this day, and you're kind of like, you're the marketing team, and so, hit the ground running, pal.
That's excellent. And the thing is, of course, you've dealt with other companies. As a matter of fact, Kaiju Max is still going on right now. I believe issue what 3 just released.
No, it's done. I mean, the big trade paperback, or the big
Sorry, the
hardcover.
volume 2. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, and the third soft cover that reprints the hardcover. I don't know, like
Yep.
it's the third edition the third types of edition that's come out is about to come out. So yeah.
That's it.
But yeah, I'm been done with that one for a while, content wise.
Right, right. So to get into this, so I implore you because I've actually had a chance to go over a lot of your work, and you tend to deal with a lot of emotion in your books.
Okay.
The distinction of it, Kaiju Max, of course, deals in some instances with addiction.
Yeah.
Heck dealt with grief.
Yeah.
The Replacement God,
Oh wow.
Replacement
Going
God,
back.
yeah, Replacement God kind of deals with like not necessarily understanding what a person's role is until you actually take that position.
Yeah, that's really astute. I mean, a lot of this stuff this is what I'm coming up with on the day. Like a lot of the emotional stuff and a lot of the sort of like character business and stuff is stuff that I kind of do that like I kind of know, well, I'm going to do it. It's going to be in there somewhere. So I kind of plan out plot stuff and I kind of plan out like more the mechanics of it because that's a little bit harder to do on the fly. Whereas I can make something a huge bummer at any time of the day, any day of the week.
Well,
And so
I see back there on your whiteboard exactly what that looks like.
oh yeah, that's right. That's right. It's funny. I use that a lot for Kaiju Max. Because it's like there's so many characters and so many plot lines and stuff like that. Though, so I would color code each plot line, and I would kind of put them in there, and then I kind of tell at a glance if there's enough of whatever, the green plot line or whatever.
Mm,
This is for Sleep, and it's not as useful because it's so focused and it's so narrow that like it's a little bit easier to sort of keep track because you're just following one character, so you don't really need to plot it out that way. It ends up getting plotted out different ways. So,
mm.
but yeah, and so anyway, I know that I can add that emotion and that sort of sadness or the grief or melancholy or
Yeah.
or like I can kind of add that because that's how my mind works and that's what makes something important to me. And so yeah, it kind of happens on the day. And Replacement God was so long ago that like yeah, it's interesting to say that like figuring out what your role is because that's what it was. Like I was 21 or 2 when I started that. Like, I was like, what does the world have for me? What am I supposed to be doing out here?
Hmm.
You know? And
Excellent.
so yeah.
Now, this particular character that you put together, and I gotta say, for people that don't know, you are of course responsible for the artwork as well as the story in this.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, it's fascinating because it's supposed to be done this way, especially in the matter of fact of how You've of course created this whole grayscale version of
Yeah.
the story, very black and white, very Twilight Zone-ish. And then of course there's that distinct red cue that goes
Yeah.
throughout every single page that well, for one, you've already put a version of conspiracy theories throughout your books because
Yeah.
me, I've drawn into it myself to where I'm trying to figure out exactly what the deal is.
Yeah. Yeah. What the deal is exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, I mean, well, and I mean, I had kind of wanted. The funny thing is, it really emerged out of something that wasn't nearly so interesting. Like, it was just kind of me being like, well, do you know who Jabbar Nicholas is?
No.
He's a cartoonist, and anyway, he wears like cool frames on his glasses. They're every time like they're white, like white frames or whatever. And I just thought that was really cool. And so I
Yeah.
wanted to have a character. Like I thought that was a great character design element. And so I wanted a character who had at first white glasses, but then it's like the character's white, and in it's black and white, and so he's like really white. And so I gave him red glasses to stand out, and then I was like, well, from a printing point of view, it's like, well, you can't just have one thing be red. So let's have other things be red. And so I kind of came up with the justification for what's red. I didn't just want it to be blood, like to spook people or whatever. I wanted it to be something more interesting. And so yeah, and so that's the sort of like lore element that it's sort of building to. And but yeah, it is funny that I wasn't really like trying to be I wasn't like trying to be all like, oh yeah, I'm David Lynch and I'm coming up with this
Hmm.
thing. It's more like, oh, I'm David Lynch and I'm coming up with this elaborate, mythology on the fly like David Lynch does.
Oh my goodness. Now, um, also with that distinct coloring, when we're reading this, we're looking at it from the perspective of Jonathan, to where we all see red.
Uh-huh.
But that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, he doesn't see it.
He doesn't see it at all.
No, no, his glasses look regular or whatever they are supposed to be to him. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I don't think that there's too much to be read into like, oh, we're this omniscient, we're this just the omniscient narrator is the visuals, whatever, like
Right.
it's, um, but yeah, like I just wanted to have and again, it's like I'm compulsive about like, let's put in a bunch of junk in the background, like I did top 10 when there was always like junk in the background, jokes and, gags and whatnot.
Mhm.
Kaiju Max is the same way. And so with this book, which is pretty plain as far as that's concerned, like it's just regular world. Like you can't just put like kaiju jokes.
Right.
So I was thinking, well, I really want to put like mystery and detail and stuff like that. And a lot of times I kind of thought, well, in a way, if you don't color it red, in something way in the background, it's kind of not fair to say like, wow, you should have noticed those rocks or whatever. Like it's like, no, they're red. Like you don't know what they're for, but like they're red and you've noticed them. So um yeah, I don't know. It's fun. It's a fun way of thinking about stuff
Hmm.
instead of the same way that I've been doing it for the other books.
Now, I could be the obvious podcaster and ask you what were the inspirations that brought you to create a horror comic, but I'll dig a little bit deeper.
Okay, good.
Um, what necessarily would be the aspect of introducing something as sleep into the subtext or the subgenre of a particular comic? Now, my own perspective, I was a big fan of Sleepwalker, the Marvel comic, as a
Oh,
kid.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
And I used to, for one of my favorite comics because it introduced an entire world that happened while
Mm.
he was
Hmm.
asleep. Um,
Yeah.
Also, of course, I mean, if we want to talk about like Nightmare on Elm Street,
Yeah.
or better yet, Dreamscape with Dennis Quaid,
Uh-huh.
or
Yeah.
the Machinist with Christian Bale,
Oh, uh-huh. Sure. Yeah.
where certain things tend to happen in a more horrific way because you're either having a lack of sleep, or better yet, something happens when you are asleep, and it's just a
Yeah.
whole dimension of things that could happen. Why
Yeah.
why choose the subtext of sleep?
Well, like I mean, I always think dreams are pretty interesting, but of course this doesn't have any dreams per se. Like Heck was very much like a had a dreamlike logic to it in a way, or like certainly when he came out of hell, he he remembered things kind of like a dream where it's like, oh, I remember it being so sad, but it's not, it was just a bunch of
Right.
stuff that
It's
happened,
almost like it didn't happen five
Yeah,
seconds
yeah, yeah.
ago.
When you're trying to explain to someone, you're like, yeah, it was so scary. It's like, no, what with the facts, no one's gonna like agree with you that it's scary. But anyway, what I liked about the reason that I had it be sleep was just that like I wanted to really limit what we saw. I really wanted to limit what you know, and so that you're really kind of, when you see a movie where that like really kind of locks in that frame or something where you're just kind of trying to see around the corner, like what else? You're just so hungry for information. That was what I really wanted to do, and I really liked the idea of, and I when I was explaining this to people, they're like, and in case people who listen to the podcast don't know the premise, it's basically like a Jekyll and Hyde story, but you
Yeah.
only see the Jekyll parts. That you only see his waking hours, and when he falls asleep, he turns into something horrible. And I was explaining to a bunch of people, and they're like, "So you're not going to see the creature?" And I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Jesus!" Like they're
Right.
just so
Like
disappointed.
like you're waiting within those first two issues. You're like, it's going to happen, but
Yeah,
no. Each
yeah,
time it's like it's Jonathan climbing over like a rail. Like Jesus Christ, what happened?
yeah. Right. Well, and I wanted to, and it's like and by the end there will be a lot more revealed and all that stuff. But like,
Okay.
but the idea that the premise being that you don't see this creature, and I kept saying like, there's a zillion comics like that where you do see
Oh
the
yeah.
creature, and like what in a way I wanted to do it so it's like he's in your imagination, which is the best artist that you could possibly ask for, is that is what people will imagine when you don't draw it. And it's a mystery. It's not supposed to be something where it's like, yeah, we see the werewolf or whatever running around, and then we see the guy waking up and he's like, gee whiz, where's the werewolf? Like I
Hmm.
want it to be very mysterious and very sort of like haunting to him. Why do I have all, why is my skin doing this? And so forth. So
Oh,
uh yeah. So yeah, I mean, I really just wanted to tell a story that basically blocked out half of the story and made people really stress about like what's happening in between issues.
excellent. Now, I'll ask this because of the setting.
Okay.
And I also like the interpretation of basically the setting being almost like another character in this.
Uh-huh.
You obviously understand that there's he grew up in a small town. He's always been there. He's never left.
Yeah.
Did you grow up in a small town?
I didn't, but I went to college in a small town, and so that's what it's based on. So it
Okay.
was like shout out to Grinnell, Iowa, which is where I went to school. But yeah, it's like a little town. I mean, this town, I feel like it looks like it has about 11 people in it. The
Yeah.
town that I based it on, has like 8,000 people, but that's in sort of like a surrounding area.
Mm.
But yeah, like something that's kind of, that's kind of 6 blocks by 10 blocks. That I really kind of liked the idea that it's like, yeah, you kind of have to deal with what you got, and and of course it's nice to have a limited cast and have a reason for that, instead of just like, oh, I just happen to run into the same 5 people every day.
It's
But
true.
but yeah, I mean, and of course, like I think it's almost cartoonishly small. Like it couldn't support itself on that few people, but you know, and um, and I don't remember what version I sent to you, but in the inside front cover, there's like a little map of the town.
Yes.
And of course,
Yep.
yeah, you did. Okay, good. And it's like too small to even be a town, but like, just sort of you get a sense for like, oh, well, when I'm talking about this building, that's what I mean. And, you know,
Yeah, I wouldn't
and
even call it a town. It was like a borough.
yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, you're like, there's probably a bank somewhere, like somewhere in there. I don't
Yeah.
know.
So the character of Hip,
Yeah,
returning back to his old loathsome small town, and
yeah,
obviously it was like the bad kid that made big.
right.
Describe his angle in the story, especially when it comes to the terms of Jonathan.
Well, yeah. So Jonathan is the main character. I think he has a lot of the weaknesses, I think, in my own protagonist, which is that I think that sometimes I make protagonists that are a little bit passive and a little bit numb. And I think that that works for him. Like in the course of the thing, he's possessed by this unthinkable evil. And so you kind of want him to be sort of like good and kind of like a person who would never harm a fly, which is
Yeah.
so I like to always then bring a secondary character in that's very sort of like loud and boisterous and like funny and like, has a snarky comment for this or that. Then they can then you have somebody to play off of, you
Right.
know. And I think that always it works really well. And every time I've done like an ensemble something with an ensemble cast, I always want to have make sure that I've got those guys, you know, or those whoever those characters are to sort of say like, you know, hey, what's the, you know, why are you so glum, chum, or whatever, you know, so that we can move things along. And I think also those the trio of three characters, and I'm sure we'll get to the other character, but like
Yeah.
the trio of characters all kind of have this, they just kind of triangulate around the church, and
Yeah.
what they get out of religion is very different from each other. And I wanted to sort of like play that, I just wanted to game that out for the story a little bit.
I did notice that heavily. One particularly due to the fact that Jonathan doesn't have any other family around, or have we
Mhm.
not seen yet? It's almost like John lives alone. There's no other family around. He's pretty much. Would you describe him as an introvert?
Yeah, I think that he's kind of an introvert, and I think, I mean, I wanted to get the idea across that his parents had died, and that like
Okay.
that's why he has this house that's kind of too big for him. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Looks
it's
huge.
like he's sleeping on the couch, like he just kind of can't really pull it together, and he just works at a coffee shop, like that. His life has been kind of turned upside down, but he's handling it like he's not. His life isn't chaotic. He's just kind of like and just kind of trying to hold it together a little bit. I really, you know, it's funny because it's like when the world is more realistic than other things that I've done, it's like you can do a lot of subtle stuff and not have it be part of the story necessarily. I mean, I think that that sets up the way that his character is, but it isn't necessarily part of the story why his parents have died. It's like, no, it's probably something ordinary like a disease or something, you know. And so, you know, and like it, so that we can kind of just sort of say, well, it just adds a little color to the world, and it doesn't, so it doesn't feel like every character popped into existence the
True.
1 second before the story started.
Yeah, and you come to find out, of course, we were talking about the two characters with Jonathan and Hipp, Tabby as well.
Yeah.
They all, like you said before, center around their religion and basically living inside the church. I know a lot of people that are like basically base their own community around the church that's in their neighborhood.
Sure. And that's,
So
I mean, and it's like, yeah, that's the people that you see every week, you know.
yeah, and
Um,
it just so happens like in issue two, of course, we talk about with, I'm not gonna say it.
yeah, right, right.
Don't want to bust that out there, but they all have a distinct relationship with the pastor of the church.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, and I just wanted to sort of say like, yeah, like religion, even if it says the exact same thing to everyone, means different things to people. And
Yeah,
so, you know, and just broadly speaking, I wanted to say like, okay, well, Jonathan feels like he gets a sort of a moral code out of it, you know, like like well, this is good and this is bad, and you know, and just has something to follow on a daily basis. Whereas Tabby sort of feels like it's a knowledge, you know, she's a scientist, and so she's sort of like gaining knowledge and wisdom about the world. And I felt like Hipp was sort of like, I felt like he kind of felt like this sort of gave an order to society, you know, like that
yeah.
these are the things, that these are the laws that people should follow, rather than a morality. It's more of a like a I don't know, like a law, you know what I mean,
Yeah,
like
like a
a series
code.
of laws. Yeah, code
Yeah, like a
for yeah,
code. Well, with him, I see him as like the free spirited one.
sure.
And just so happens to be the fact that he is the chief of police's son. So it's always the one that's like the heavy, strict disciplinarian that has the free will type of son or
Yeah,
daughter that's just
yeah,
like, you know what? No,
was not
I'm
happy to
I'm
be.
not going to be as militant as that guy.
Yeah, and now I have to come like live with my dad or whatever, you know, who's the, yeah, anyway. It's fun to, again, it's like when you don't have like robots and monsters and stuff like that, like with my last book, it's like it's fun to sort of say like, oh, well, I have to have a lot of it's fun to sort of like come up with like, oh, well, here's some sort of the mechanics of living in this town and the mechanics of coming back to this town where you went to high school, you know, and like remembering things that you went people you went to high school with, and like, oh, like running into an old teacher, and all that sort of stuff is really fun to add because it's so low key,
Yeah.
but it's really kind of fun to sort of like get into the weeds about that stuff, instead of, you know, instead of so going so big that like that stuff would be too subtle to even bother with.
You know another big distinction of that? Paying for your coffee with a check.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right.
I haven't
Yeah.
seen that in a long time.
Right, right. Well, I used to work and again, I used to work at a coffee shop, which is why, like I had a really sense for how those espresso machines work. But but yeah, like people are always paying with a check in like 1996 or whatever. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh man, come on. $1.71.
Mm.
They weren't tipping either. You know?
True. There is no tip on that. You going to add a little extra on that? It's not
Right,
gonna
right,
happen.
right. What am I gonna do? Like go and like cash the check and give the store some of it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. There's an extra 3 cents written on here. Let me just take that
Yeah.
out. No, it's not
Right.
going to happen.
No.
So to get into the crust of this thing, can I ask you about the homeless in this town,
Mm.
particularly Mrs. Dawson, who
Hmm.
does not like herself being called by her married name.
Yeah, it's well, like I wanted to sort of imply like that the name gets mentioned by the pastor early on in that issue, and like and sort of like there's this sort of like mm, the idea that that he did something wrong in the past. And so yeah, I mean that's all. I mean obviously it's stuff that you're all going to get, that we're going to get into, but I really what's kind of funny is that I just based her design on this homeless character that was in the comic strip Doonesbury. I don't know if you ever read Doonesbury, but
It was
it
like
was
that was all in the newspapers.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I
Yeah,
mean, and of course, like every time I see a book in a store, I always get it because it's
it was
great,
like a
like
babushka, like a
yeah,
Russian
that's right.
grandmother.
That's right. And it's like, and so I was kind of like using her as sort of like a starting point, and then I was like, oh no, I really basically just reproduced her look in there. I mean, she doesn't have the same personality or anything, but like, anyway, it was funny. So, but yeah, like and I think that, I mean, again, it's like when you're coming up with a cast of characters, you kind of want everybody to kind of have a different angle on things,
Hmm.
and it's like, well, here's a person who is their perspective on everything is going to be sort of like colored by by addiction, or by just sort of like exhaustion, or grief or fury or anything like that, so that she's not just another person saying the usual stuff. And
Yeah,
again, and it's like I think it's fun, I say fun, but I mean it's interesting to do characters like that, where there's a chance to sort of be a little bit I mean, empathetic, but also just sort of say like there's other viewpoints here.
yeah,
It's not all just from like this kid who's kind of too much like me. You know what I mean? It's like in terms of like privilege, and in terms of like sort of like isn't really hurting for money, or isn't really sort of like. And so I wanted to sort of say like, okay, well, here's a bunch of people that are all kind of, that all kind of have different situations, that and bring them to this center point, without making it too much like the plot is driving it along.
yeah. And even probably like I think a couple pages later, this very mysterious character in the middle of the pavilion,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is
Oh,
almost
yeah.
like the dun dun
Yeah,
dun.
right, right.
Like
Well, and the funny thing is, I mean, just to as a peek behind the scenes, those pages weren't originally in it, and then I was because I it was 22-page comic, and then I kind of realized, oh, Image kind of gives you a 32-page book, and then you can do as many pages as you want.
right.
And then fill the rest with ads or letters and stuff like that. And so I just was like, oh, well, I kind of wanted there to be a little bit more air in the story. So I just added those extra pages, and sort of inserted this character, who can sort of like who paints with all this red paint, and sort of like is filling in the gaps of a whole bunch of like red lore stuff.
Yeah.
Like I just thought, oh, like I felt like there were some mysteries, but I wanted to give it sort of one more boost to the mystery.
Mhm.
It's just anyway.
So
Yeah.
as far as like the connection that Jonathan has with like his two friends, obviously with the fact that we've discovering that his parents, of course, have passed. These are the only two connections. Better yet, before Hip got there, Tabby was probably like his only driving force of just
Right.
getting up, going out of the house, meet me here, let's hang for
Yeah.
a little bit. So it's
And
like, is there a duality between the Beast and him?
I mean, well, I mean, sure, but I also, but I also like, yeah, in a way, I wanted to sort of like, well, I wanted to have this character have this friend who is sort of a platonic friend,
Hmm.
um, who isn't just, it's not like she's not interested in having a boyfriend. She immediately falls for this new guy in town. But like I kind of liked I really like having stories about platonic friendships because I feel like then your sort of devotion to somebody is in a way almost more sort of like chosen because
Yeah.
it's like I just like this person. I want what's good for them. They don't have to be part of my life necessarily. I mean, they're part of my life, but they don't have to like a good thing that happens to them doesn't necessarily happen to me. And I kind of like that. I like that dynamic. And I kind of like the idea that I just like sort of playing that out and having them really be devoted to each other because they know that they're good people and they like each other.
Right.
The duality thing, I'm sure there's stuff in there that I have planned out. There's stuff in there that I'm sort of doing on the day.
Yeah.
You know, all that sort of like lore stuff it just kind of is a cloud that I kind of like crystallize as I draw the page.
Right.
I mean, it's all in there, but it's also like I like to leave a little space for sort of like drawing a background and going, you know what? What else could be read back there? I think I could also do
Yeah. And
like I want a little bit of leeway.
I feel like that's needed. You're putting up street signs that obviously are pointing us in the wrong direction.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So when we
Infuriatingly so, I'm sure.
and it's totally fine because you have this conspiracy theories page. And is it safe to say that within, of course, all these issues, are we all wrong?
Oh, I mean, everybody's a little right. Like, I mean, because it's like you can kind of just guess, just if you don't even look at it, you're like, it's probably something like this. And you're like, yeah, you're probably pretty right. But like, yeah. And I mean, I think that, I wanted to have it be, it's interesting to write a mystery where you're like, okay, the mystery is kind of outside of the narrative a little bit.
Okay.
It isn't that it's not really, because I mean, his real struggle is not like what is this mystery. I mean, it sort of is, but like a lot of it is just like how do I not kill people all night long. I don't
Like,
really
how
care
does
what's
that
causing
happen?
this. I just want it to stop.
Right.
And so I kind of like the idea that like his concerns are not metaphysical at all. They're very concrete and like, all right, well, I gotta do something to stop this from happening.
Right.
And does that mean confessing to people and trying to get them to help me, but they might make it worse? Or does that mean like doing something drastic? There's a lot of stuff like that. And I kind of like the idea that is a slightly disengaged from sort of like why this is happening. And that comes later, but yeah.
Yeah, and even outside of the horror that is happening to other people, what happens to Jonathan when he realizes it's me?
It's really pretty grim. Well, and I was telling somebody like I think that with this premise, the idea that like oh like something happened in the night and you wake up somewhere else. I mean, I think there's a very potent potentially that idea has a very potent sort of like alcoholism sort of
Yeah.
analog.
Like you wouldn't believe
It
what you did. I did.
right, right, which is not in this case, but like, but I was just thinking like, oh yeah, that would be another interesting story that
Yeah.
is not this one. I thought that was, um, and I get, it's not like this is new. I mean, all this stuff has been seen before. I never really think of myself as making anything that no one has seen before. It's more just like, oh, I took a story that's very familiar and gave it a tone that's weird or or funny when it shouldn't be funny or it's serious when it should be funny or that kind of stuff. So
Mm. That now, this is a six issue series, correct?
eight
Eight.
issue. Yeah,
Now,
which I'm also regretting because I'm like, oh god, I'm burning my lead time like you wouldn't believe.
man, so as far as like where the book's going to take us, especially due to the fact of once again we're talking about a small town here, so it's like when certain things start to happen, more people are going to be aware. So all of a
Yeah,
sudden, the scarcity factor is going to get bigger.
yeah, yeah. That I think that's an interesting thing too because it's like the first issue I think is a little bit of a slow burn. I mean,
It is.
that's what people are saying, and I think it has to be because as soon as things start happening, everybody's freaking out and panicking. Like
Yeah.
I recently did a podcast where we watched Cloverfield. I don't know if you've seen
I
Cloverfield.
yes.
Yeah. Well, it's like, and everybody was like, oh man, that initial party is so long, it's so boring, and it's like, yeah, it is, but like, man, they had to make it long so
They
they could
had to.
establish all these characters because the rest of the movie they're just screaming and running around.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was the same sort of thing where it's like, well, you can't really see after the first day and a half, you can't really see people in their daily mode. And so, like, um, I wanted to make sure that I could establish, like, oh, okay, this person owns this coffee shop, this person works here, this person does this, and
Yeah. Even even
because
even Jonathan.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
Jonathan walks out to guts all over his yard and he still goes to work.
I know. Well, in the second issue, yeah, like he's in a car crash and he's like, I gotta go to, oh, it's 6 o'clock. I'm gonna be late.
I mean, what?
I think that really, and I always feel like that really tells a lot about a character when you're like, oh my God, like there's something catastrophically terrible happening, but like what's worse is I'm going to be late for work.
Right. So I can
I mean, we've all been there, right?
exactly. And so that's what I'm saying. Like with the, I guess if you want to call it the dullness of this town, they probably haven't seen any type of action or something big happening in the town in so long that
Right.
this propels the act. I guess the act of spectacle a little bit. Like, oh, let's
Yeah.
what is happening out here? Let me
Right.
jump out on the porch. Matter of fact, we're all going to be out on the porch this week because
Right.
we want to know if we see the thing.
Right. We went. Yeah. Well, it does. I mean, the people that I'm working on the third issue, it doesn't work out great for people who want to go out and see the thing.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty gruesome. But so yeah, I mean, and that's another thing too, where you have to make sure that you introduce enough characters so that if they they get killed, that you can be like, well, we still have some backups,
It's
you
true.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Hip's dad does seem like a tough cookie. He doesn't seem like somebody who scares easy.
Yeah, he's not fooling around. But who knows? But yeah, there's a lot. This, I mean, this the funny thing is, as I'm inking the third issue right now, and I'm penciling the fourth issue, and like
Yeah.
um and it's like, oh yeah, this comic gets really, really gruesome and dark. And I mean, it's already a little dark. It's pretty spooky and pretty dark, but it's like, oh, it's real. Like I kind of am surprised a lot of times when I'm like I think I'll plot something out. I'll be like, yeah, yeah, and this happens, and then this happens, and this happens, and then I'll do it. And I'll be like, geez, Louise, this is pretty
Yeah.
pretty grim. And I
And it,
mean, that's a horror comic. You can't say you weren't warned,
yeah,
but um, but yeah, and I can't say I wasn't warned. I did it to myself. So
it's true. And then all right, so take us there because then
yeah,
you'll have all these gruesome scenes. And there's the horror and the scare factor, of course, is like times 10. And then it shuffles back into Jonathan, who is like so vulnerable, so scared himself, and
right,
and unweary of what's happening to where he has to go back to his regular routine
yeah,
at
yeah,
all times. It's like, it's like
yeah,
we go from a 10 and it's like he'll shoot right back to a one. Whoop.
yeah, yeah, and yeah. I mean, I think that's again, it's like I really like drawing just as an artist. I like drawing the aftermath of things a lot more
Yeah.
than I like drawing the action of it. Like there's so rarely like actually an action scene. Like in the second issue, there's some Jonathan punches somebody in the face, and it's funny because it's like as a comic book artist, you're like grow up like learning how to do all the action shots. But by my nature, I don't really tend to do the action shots as much as I do like, somebody comes upon a scene and there's like, whatever, rubble and destruction and like
Yeah.
this tree's been knocked down and this stuff. Like that stuff is really fun to draw just because it's fun to draw chaos,
Yeah.
and try to make it compositionally sort of look nice and stuff. So but yeah, like I think that was one of the reasons that I like to do this story this way is that I wanted to draw the aftermath.
Yeah.
You
Can
know,
I tell you what that punch scene reminded me of?
oh, yeah, I'd love to know.
That punch scene, of course, he punches a cop. So
Of course,
when you're realizing the danger that you're putting yourself into, and then you're like, somebody needs to lock me up. You got to put me away. And of course, he punches a
right,
cop. But
right,
it reminded me of the werewolf scene in Monster Squad.
Where the where werewolf has nards.
Yes.
I don't remember.
So
Okay,
he's
yeah.
fighting the cops and he's telling them knock me out, and then one of the cops actually shoots him in order for him to go to the morgue. He doesn't die
Oh yeah,
there, but
of
he's like,
course.
you got to put me away.
Yeah,
So it was like one of those instances. Please put me out of my not out of my
yeah.
misery, but just get me out of this
Right,
real
right.
quick.
Stop me before I kill again, type of
Exactly.
thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and this comic story, I mean, this whole premise, I've had it sort of kicking around for 20 years, and I remember when I was writing up a story, writing up a pitch for it years ago, it was going to be a werewolf story.
Mm.
I mean, because no surprise, like it's very much framed
It's
like a
close to it.
werewolf story. Yeah, yeah. So, but but then I thought, like werewolves come with a lot of baggage where it's like you have to kind of follow the rules, like silver bullet and da 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 da. And like I just thought, well, that stuff's fun, but I'd rather have it be a little bit more mysterious, like have to figure it all out on the on the run. So
Sir, I feel like you've definitely drew the ire of a lot of mystery in this one.
yeah, okay, good.
Sure.
Yeah, good.
Sir. Yeah, so sir, I appreciate you doing this with me.
Absolutely.
This has been absolutely awesome. The fact that the fact that of course, in the world of social media, we actually get a chance to talk about this in detail.
Right.
And
Instead of just texting to each other.
exactly. I did an early review of this and I was like, you know what? I want to talk to him about this too.
Yeah. I
So
love it. I
it-
love it.
yeah, this is actually fantastic. So
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you went back and looked at those books and stuff like that. Like that's really fun. I mean, that's those books are fun to look at. I was had to look at Heck the other just today because I was sending somebody a PDF and it's like oh yeah, like I can look back on it and go like yeah, that was pretty rough, but that was fun. That was cool. Like that was interesting. Oh, I forgot about that.
yeah, definitely. Definitely. So, Sleep, of course, gets introduced to us tomorrow. It's going to be in stores. So, what's the reception going to be like tomorrow? What you doing?
Who knows? Well, I'm in Minnesota, so I'm in the Twin Cities, and so I'll be at a comic book store, Hot Comics in Richfield, and I'll just be signing there all afternoon. And I did these um,
Ah,
like advanced copy things. And so anyway, it's a sketch cover, and so I draw like Jonathan on one side, and then like a monster on the right. Like oh, it could be any monster that he
be
turns into. So
anybody.
like this is Dracula. Somebody requested Dracula holding a D20, and then somebody else wanted a caricature of himself, and I made him a vampire. Um, so yeah, like I mean, those are fun. Like it's fun
Yeah,
to do a little sketch, a little watercolor. So
excellent, man. Well, look, sir, for one, I can't wait to get into issue two. I hope we get a chance to talk about that a little bit as well.
oh yeah.
And I do wish you the best with this storyline. I'm really looking forward to the rest of the story.
Thank you so much, James. I mean, it's really great to talk about it and yeah, and just shoot the breeze. Yeah, and then you got my number. We'll talk about it any old time.
Absolutely. We'll for sure chat about it. So
Yeah.
for everybody here at the Facts Project, Zander Cannon, Sleep issue one for Image Comics is going to be released tomorrow. So if you haven't had a chance to get it in your stores, please do your due diligence to get your pre-orders out there right now. But it will be on sale for you guys tomorrow. Make sure that we're getting these second printings, third printings, so on and so forth. It just gets everybody over the finish line.
Right.
Exactly. So for all of us here, once again, myself, James Grandmaster Facts Boys, Xander Cannon, for the Facts Project, we are out.